The night Elena Vasquez crawled to the door of the wrong building. She was leaving a trail of blood on marble steps that cost more per square foot than her monthly rent. She did not know whose building it was. She did not know whose door she was pressing her palm against. She knew 3 things. Her husband had done this. She had survived it. And she was not going to die on these steps. The door opened. The man standing in the frame was tall, dark, and looked at her with eyes that had seen everything this world could produce and had stopped being surprised by most of it. But something crossed his face in that moment. Not surprise. Something older and colder and far more dangerous than surprise. He looked at the blood. Then at her face. Then he said to someone behind him, "Get the doctor now." He knelt on his expensive marble steps and put his jacket around her shoulders and said to her directly, "You are safe. Nothing else touches you tonight." Elena Vasquez had not been safe in 4 years. She did not know what to do with the word. She held on to it anyway. Elena had not always been the woman bleeding on marble steps. 4 years ago, she had been someone else entirely. A structural engineer with a portfolio of bridge designs she was proud of. A small apartment she had filled with plants and books. A laugh that her colleagues said could fix a bad Monday. She had met Marco Vasquez at an industry gala. Charming, attentive, the kind of man who made you feel like the most important person in his radius. The warning signs had been there in the first year. Small things. A comment about her clothes. A dinner canceled because she had stayed late at work. A silence that lasted 3 days after she disagreed with him publicly at a party. She had read each sign and found an explanation for it. That was more comfortable than the truth. This was not stupidity. This was what people do when they love someone and are afraid of what the truth costs. The escalation had been gradual enough to feel almost logical in retrospect, which was the most insidious thing about it. By year 2, she had quietly stopped seeing certain friends because Marco found reasons to be unhappy when she did. By year 3, she had taken a smaller role at her firm because he had said, reasonably, that her hours were affecting their marriage. By year 4, she had a life that fit entirely inside the shape he had decided it should fit, and she had arrived there one small concession at a time. The night of the marble steps was not the first time he had been physically violent. It was the first time she had been left alone long enough afterward to reach a door. She had reached it. That was the only thing that mattered now. The building she had crawled to was not random. She had been left 2 blocks away and had moved toward the nearest light. What she did not know was that the building belonged to Luca Carone. The Luca Carone, which would have meant nothing to Elena a year ago and meant a great deal to everyone else in that zip code. Luca was 38 years old and ran the Carone family's operations across the eastern seaboard with a precision that had kept them intact through 3 regime changes in the broader landscape of their world. He was not known for mercy. He was known for fairness, which is different and rarer. He was known for a code that had exactly one absolute rule, one that his father had given him and his father's father before that no woman and no child came to harm within the reach of the Carone name. Elena had crawled to the right door. She just didn't know it yet. The doctor arrived in 11 minutes. Elena was on the couch in what appeared to be a very large, very quiet room full of expensive things and several men who stood at careful distances and looked at the floor rather than at her, which she registered as a specific kind of consideration. The doctor, a woman, 50s, who moved with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who had done this before, worked quickly and without unnecessary commentary. 3 cracked ribs, a laceration above her left eye that needed 5 stitches, bruising across her left shoulder, and collarbone that would take 6 weeks to fully resolve. The doctor said all of this matter-of-factly. Elena listened matter-of-factly. They were both women who had developed professional relationships with difficult information. When the doctor finished, she said, "You need rest, and you need to not go back to wherever this came from." Elena said, "I know." It was the first time she had said those 2 words out loud about her marriage. The weight of them was extraordinary. Luca came back into the room when the doctor was done. He sat across from her, not close, not crowding, in the chair nearest the door, which she understood was deliberate, giving her the room, the exit, the choice. He said, I'm not going to ask you questions tonight. You don't owe me information. She looked at him, said, Why did you help me? He said, Because you were on my steps and you needed help. That's the entire reason. She said, People don't usually. He said, So no, I know what people usually do. I'm not people usually. She almost laughed. The almost laugh surprised her. Her face had forgotten it was capable of that. He said, There's a room. Clean clothes. Lock on the door that works from the inside. You stay as long as you need and you leave when you choose. No conditions, she said. You don't know me. He said, You don't know me either. We can fix that later if you want. Tonight you just need to sleep. She stayed 3 days. The room had a lock she used. The clothes fit. Someone left food outside the door at mealtimes. Not knocking. Just leaving, which she understood was also deliberate. On the second day she unlocked the door and walked through the apartment because she needed to understand her geography. This was a structural engineer's instinct, knowing the load-bearing elements of any space she occupied. The apartment was on the top 2 floors of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art that was serious rather than decorative, books and red ones with broken spines, a kitchen that had been used by someone who knew how to cook. She was standing at the window looking at the city when Luca came in from wherever he had been and found her there. He stopped. Said, Better? She said, Structurally stable. He looked at her for a moment. Said, Is that your version of yes? She said, It's my version of working on it. On the 3rd day she told him enough. Not everything, she was not ready for everything. But enough, his name, her husband's name, the 4 years, the shape of it. She told it clinically, the way she would present findings to a client, because that was the only register in which she could currently produce the words. Luca listened without moving, without the expressions people usually made, the wincing, the sympathetic tilts, the looks that made her feel like a case study. He listened the way a wall holds weight, steadily, without comment, without making the weight about itself. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, then said, What do you need? Not, I'm sorry. Oh, that's terrible. What do you need? She had been asked 100 variations of how she felt, and never once that specific question. She said, I need to make sure he can't find me, and then I need to figure out what comes after that. He said, I can help with the first part. The second part is yours. Marco Vasquez found out his wife was missing on the morning of day 2. This information reached Luca through channels that were